Bianca Michelle Devins was born on October 2, 2001, in Utica, New York. She was artistic, introverted, and deeply introspective, a teenage girl who used the internet not just for entertainment, but for connection. Diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, she found solace in online communities like 4chan, Discord, and Instagram, where she could express herself more freely than in the outside world. There, behind a screen, she built a persona that oscillated between dark humor and raw vulnerability. Her appearance was striking: long brown hair, expressive green eyes, and a style that flirted with the soft grunge aesthetic. Yet behind every filter and carefully angled photo was a girl struggling to define herself. Bianca's world, like many teenage girls navigating mental health challenges, was complex and layered. She had recently graduated from T.R. Proctor High School and planned to attend Mohawk Valley Community College in the fall to study psychology. Her future was starting to take shape, slowly but surely, and those close to her noticed her growing independence. It was during her online wanderings that she met Brandon Andrew Clark. Born in 1997, Clark was 4 years older than Bianca. On the surface, he appeared charming and attentive. He was a regular in many of the same Discord servers Bianca frequented and soon developed a rapport with her. Offline, Clark's life was fractured. His childhood had been marred by violence. He witnessed his father hold his mother at knife point when he was just a child. Though outwardly composed, he exhibited a disturbing pattern of manipulative behavior and emotional dependency, masked by a false sense of devotion. Their friendship developed into something more intimate, though the term relationship may be misleading. Bianca confided in friends and family that she didn't see Clark as a boyfriend, but more as a trusted companion, someone she allowed into her circle out of familiarity. Her sister would later describe him as a family friend, someone who had been around often enough to earn a place at the dinner table. But others raised concerns. There were signs: possessiveness, jealousy, and an unsettling fixation. Brandon often acted entitled to Bianca's time, to her attention, and, dangerously, to her affection. On July 13, 2019, Bianca attended a concert in New York City with Clark. It was a show by Nicole Dollenganga, an artist whose melancholic themes mirrored many of Bianca's own online posts. She had made plans to meet another male friend there, a detail that did not go unnoticed by Clark. Friends who interacted with Bianca online that evening sensed nothing amiss. She posted pictures, smiled in selfies, and seemed content. But Clark's demeanor shifted during the drive back to Utica in the early hours of July 14. Something inside him had fractured, and by the time they reached a dead-end street near a wooded area in the city, the simmering emotions boiled over. According to Clark's later confession, seeing Bianca kiss another boy at the concert ignited a rage he had long tried to suppress. In the hours that followed, the unthinkable happened. Bianca was brutally attacked inside the vehicle. Clark, armed with a large knife, slit her throat in a fit of homicidal jealousy. The attack was swift, violent, and fatal. As she bled out in the back seat, he took out his phone, not to call for help, not to express remorse, but to document his crime. He photographed her lifeless body with chilling precision. Blood soaked her clothing, pooled on the seat beneath her, and stained the car's upholstery. Her pale face was captured in multiple images, some close-up, others zoomed out, and posted across Discord servers and Snapchat stories with captions that mocked her death. One caption read, "I'm sorry, Bianca." Another, "I have to end it all." For hours, his posts ricocheted across social media, spreading from private forums into the public consciousness. Members of Discord initially believed the photos were fake, part of a sick internet hoax. But as more images surfaced and Clark's live updates continued, dread set in. Panic spread rapidly. Strangers and friends alike tried to call Bianca's phone. Others reported the images to the police. At the same time, Clark posted a cryptic message to his own Instagram account, a final selfie of himself covered in blood, with the caption, "I'm sorry, Bianca." Around 7 a.m. on July 14, Utica police received a 911 call from Clark himself. He described the location and said he had harmed himself and someone else. When officers arrived at the wooded road, they found Clark sitting beside the car, attempting to take his own life by stabbing his neck with a knife. A tarp partially covered the back seat of the car, and beneath it, the body of Bianca Devins. Clark survived his suicide attempt and was taken into custody. The arrest was swift, but the impact of his actions would reverberate far beyond the crime scene. Bianca's family was informed just hours later. Her mother, Kim Devins, had woken up to a barrage of messages from strangers online, some expressing condolences, others sending her the very photos Clark had posted. In a moment of profound horror, she was forced to face the reality of her daughter's death through the twisted lens of the internet. What followed was a nightmare that transcended a personal tragedy. The crime became a digital phenomenon, unfolding in real time on public platforms. It wasn't just that Bianca had been murdered, it was the way her death had been turned into content, consumed by thousands, and weaponized against her grieving loved ones. The news of Bianca Devins' murder swept across Utica with a sudden, piercing shock. It was not just that a 17-year-old girl had been brutally killed, it was the way the tragedy unfolded, broadcast and consumed like digital theater. Her family's mourning began not in a hospital room or funeral home, but on their smartphones, as they were inundated with unspeakable images. Her mother, Kim Devins, was notified of Bianca's death after the crime scene had already gone viral. Friends and strangers alike began sending screenshots of the gruesome photos, sometimes out of misguided concern, other times with cruel intent. There was no buffer between the moment of her death and the public's access to it. Bianca's final moments were no longer hers, they had been stolen, repackaged, and shared without mercy. Within hours, the hashtag #RIPBianca began trending, interwoven with graphic content that platforms were unable, or unwilling, to fully control. Clark's photos appeared on Instagram, Discord, Twitter, and even obscure forums that reveled in shock material. Some users reposted the images for clout. Others mocked her, weaponizing misogyny and false narratives to justify the violence. A disturbing chorus emerged in the comment sections: "She deserved it. E-girls get what's coming." These weren't isolated trolls, they were part of a larger ecosystem of hatred that had metastasized in digital spaces. Discord servers that Bianca once frequented were flooded with arguments, mourning, and disbelief. Some friends blamed themselves for not seeing Clark's warning signs. Others, recognizing the danger of parasocial relationships, began distancing themselves from similar online connections. The internet, once Bianca's sanctuary, had become a graveyard of her identity, scrutinized, judged, and abused in real time. Meanwhile, law enforcement moved quickly. Investigators secured the crime scene on the morning of July 14, collecting the knife, Clark's phone, and multiple digital devices. The cell phone contained hundreds of messages, photos, and search histories that painted a damning picture. In the days leading up to the concert, Clark had been researching ways to carry out a murder-suicide. He had searched for methods of killing and for articles about violent crimes that received media attention. His obsession with notoriety became clear: he didn't just want to kill, he wanted to be seen doing it. Investigators combed through his digital footprint, uncovering a chilling manifesto of entitlement and rage. His internet history revealed a fascination with incel forums and communities that encouraged violence against women. He had engaged with threads promoting the idea that men were owed affection, and if denied, retaliation was justified. In Clark's world, Bianca's rejection wasn't an ending, it was a provocation. As detectives built their case, they also contended with the chaos unleashed online. The photos of Bianca's body were so widely spread that local officials had to issue a public appeal for people to stop sharing them. The Utica Police Department's statement urged users to think of the victim's family. But the request was largely ignored. The images continued circulating for weeks. Moderation systems on platforms like Instagram and Facebook failed to catch every repost, and even when flagged, content wasn't always removed promptly. This breakdown prompted national scrutiny. Why, in an age of advanced algorithms, could tech giants not stop the dissemination of something so horrifying? Critics lambasted social media companies for valuing engagement over safety, claiming they were too slow to act and too indifferent to user harm. For Bianca's family, it was an additional wound. Their daughter had been brutalized twice, once in life, and again in death, through unrelenting digital exposure. At the same time, misinformation ran rampant. Rumors swirled that Bianca and Clark had a secret relationship, that they were in love, or that she had cheated on him. These claims spread without verification, twisting the narrative into one of romantic betrayal. But those who knew Bianca insisted otherwise. She had never dated Clark, never made romantic promises. She had been clear about her boundaries. The notion of a jilted lover was nothing more than a lie Clark clung to in order to justify the unforgivable. In court, Clark showed little remorse. During pretrial proceedings, he smiled for cameras, blew kisses, and appeared performative. His demeanor disgusted observers and enraged Bianca's loved ones. It became apparent that he relished the attention. His murder had earned him the spotlight he could never claim in life, and now he was basking in it. Bianca's family, however, refused to let that narrative define her. They worked to reclaim her story, not as a victim of violence, but as a vibrant young woman with dreams and passions. Kim Devins began speaking publicly about the dangers of online misogyny and the need for greater protections. The family founded the Bianca Michelle Devins Memorial Scholarship Fund, aiming to support students pursuing psychology and help raise awareness about mental health. Their goal was to create something meaningful from the ashes of their grief. Pressure continued to mount on social media platforms to change how they handled graphic content. Lawmakers began exploring policy solutions. In the wake of the tragedy, U.S. Representative Anthony Brindisi introduced Bianca's Law legislation aimed at holding tech companies accountable for failing to remove violent imagery quickly and efficiently. The bill called for new government offices to monitor harmful content and increased penalties for platforms that allowed such material to proliferate. Though Bianca had been taken in an unimaginably cruel way, her name was now tied to a growing push for reform. Her case exposed the extent to which digital spaces could be weaponized, how algorithms sometimes promoted the very content they should suppress. It also underscored the blurred lines between online identity and real-life vulnerability. As the trial date approached, Clark shocked the court with a sudden guilty plea. On February 10, 2020, he admitted to second-degree murder, waiving his right to a trial. The decision spared the Devins family from sitting through the replay of Bianca's death in open court, but it did little to ease their pain. The man who had destroyed their daughter's life had chosen his moment of contrition with as much calculation as his crime. On sentencing day, the courtroom fell into heavy silence. Kim Devins gave a statement describing the horror of seeing her daughter's final moments splashed across the internet. She spoke of the sleepless nights, the trauma, and the stolen future. She described how her youngest daughter cried herself to sleep, terrified that someone might send her one of the images. Clark, wearing a jail-issued jumpsuit, stared ahead, emotionless. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison, the maximum allowed under the law. There was no applause, no sense of victory. Only a quiet, hollow finality. But outside the courthouse, Bianca's story was far from over. She had become a symbol, not only of senseless violence, but of how technology, when left unchecked, could amplify and immortalize cruelty. Brandon Clark didn't try to run. When police arrived on Post Street in Utica, they found him lying beside Bianca's lifeless body, soaked in her blood, his own neck slashed. He had staged the scene with calculated horror, propping up a phone to record a twisted farewell as emergency responders desperately tried to stop the bleeding. His failed suicide was no act of remorse, it was just another extension of the spectacle he had begun hours earlier, one that now engulfed the entire nation. Bianca Michelle Devins was gone. Just 17 years old, her murder had become something far more sinister than a single act of violence. It had evolved into a digital plague. Images of her mutilated body were already spreading, reposted, mocked, glorified by the most depraved corners of the internet. Some viewers believed it was fake. Others egged it on. Social media companies scrambled to delete the photos, but they multiplied faster than they could react. Back in Utica, Bianca's family tried to mourn while being bombarded by online cruelty. Her mother, Kim Devins, pleaded with platforms to take down the graphic content. It didn't matter. Each time they thought it was gone, it reappeared on another site, another profile, another hashtag. Her death was being turned into digital ammunition, used to shock, humiliate, and traumatize. Meanwhile, Clark, recovering in police custody, gave his statement. He admitted everything. He described watching Bianca kiss another man that night and said it sent him into a rage. He claimed it felt like betrayal, though Bianca had never promised exclusivity. He refused to accept rejection. She didn't belong to him, and that infuriated him. Investigators uncovered his digital trail, search history, saved photos, and the now infamous murder selfie he sent to friends and posted online, captioned with chilling indifference. Clark had planned his actions with disturbing precision, even tagging Bianca's account in posts showing her bloodied body. He wanted the world to see. He wanted her death to be unforgettable. In the days that followed, the Devins family faced a new battle. Beyond grief, they now fought to reclaim Bianca's memory from the spectacle Clark had created. The teenager who loved drawing, anime, and music, the girl who wrestled with mental health but never stopped trying to uplift others, was being reduced to a crime scene photo. Her life was overshadowed by the very violence that ended it. Clark was charged with second-degree murder and held without bail. His plea of not guilty initially raised concerns about a prolonged, painful trial. But on February 10, 2020, to the surprise of many, he changed his plea to guilty. The courtroom was silent as he admitted to taking Bianca's life. He spoke without emotion, offering no apology, no explanation beyond what had already been extracted from his digital footprint. For a moment, it seemed like justice would move swiftly. The Devins family prepared their statements. Sentencing was scheduled for April. But Clark had more manipulation left in him. Just days before his sentencing, he attempted to withdraw his guilty plea. He claimed he had been misled and wanted a new attorney. The move felt like a game, another way to drag out the pain, to maintain control. The judge rejected his request, and the sentencing was rescheduled for June. On June 2, 2020, Kim Devins stood in the courtroom, face to face with her daughter's killer. She didn't speak as a grieving mother, but as a voice for every parent terrified of the world their children now live in. Her victim impact statement painted a picture of who Bianca was beyond the crime, a kind-hearted, artistic soul who had finally begun to heal, to dream of college, to imagine a life worth living. Brandon Clark was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. There would be no parole until he had served the full minimum. Even then, the memory of what he did would follow him wherever he went. But the story didn't end there. The internet had not finished exploiting Bianca. The photos Clark posted continued circulating for months, appearing on TikTok, Instagram, Discord, and even Facebook. Strangers tagged her family members in the images. Algorithms pushed the content unknowingly, sometimes placing it alongside unrelated videos of pets or makeup tutorials. The trauma was relentless. It became clear that something more needed to be done. In response to the systemic failures of social media platforms, Bianca's family advocated for legislation, what would later be called Bianca's Law. The proposed federal bill would require tech companies to respond faster to violent content and create dedicated teams to manage graphic imagery. The law called for real accountability from platforms that profit from user activity but had done little to protect victims in the wake of digital violence. While the bill stalled in Congress, it sparked a nationwide conversation. Experts in digital safety, legal scholars, and online rights activists debated the ethical responsibility of content moderation in an age where virality can amplify horror. Bianca's death had become a case study, not just in violence, but in how quickly the internet can be weaponized. Despite everything, her family refused to let her legacy be defined by the crime. In her hometown, a mural was painted in her honor. It depicted butterflies, her favorite symbol, in vibrant shades of pink and purple. It wasn't about memorializing the tragedy. It was about reminding the world of who she was, a young woman with a voice, a future, and a life worth celebrating. Her social media accounts, once flooded with hateful commentary, were reclaimed by loved ones who shared stories, artwork, and words of support. Survivors of online abuse found comfort in her story, in the efforts made to protect others like her. Bianca's name became a call to action. Clark remains incarcerated at Clinton Correctional Facility, stripped of access to the platforms he once used to spread torment. But his legacy, unlike Bianca's, will not endure. The world may remember what he did, but it will never honor who he was. Bianca Michelle Devins was more than a victim. She was more than a viral post, more than a headline. In life, she inspired hope in those who knew her. In death, she ignited a movement that continues to challenge the very systems that failed her. And in that, her voice echoes on, stronger than the violence that tried to silence it. Thank you for listening to Crime Echoes with Lewis. For more content like this, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel.